everybody, it's me, Jose Segura, your SMEA president. Welcome to another episode of Fireside Chat with the President. Today is September 17th, halfway through the month of September. I know, right? I feel like it just got going, and here we are halfway through it. So I only have 3 things for you today, so let's get going. First one is retro pay. As most of you know, the school board did their part and they did the final ratification portion of our new contract language. So as of that night, September 8th, moving into September 9th, our contract has been fully ratified and is in effect, which includes retro pay for both on-schedule and off-schedule money, as well as retro pay for those of you who perform additional duties in any of these extended day or expanded learning programs. So when's that money coming? Here we go. Sorry, on-schedule and off-schedule dollars. That'll be in your October paycheck. So on schedule and off schedule, remember, means on schedule is when you have increases in your salary, your total overall salary. So we went up 1.5% last year. We also have a 3% increase this year. So for July, August, and September, for those of us who are carryover employees, we will get retro for those 3 months as well. Those of you who are new will receive retro for just the months you've worked so far this year. Okay, off-schedule money is that one-time bonus money, again, for those of us who were here last year who are moving into this year. The other category of dollars is the expanded learning or like the extended year dollars. So if you worked any of those programs, that's going to take a little longer for the district to calculate all that because it really is on a person-by-person, case-by-case basis. Not all of us do those additional jobs. And so look for that no later than probably November's paycheck. All right, so that is the retro pay. Whew. Second thing, here we go. I'm vaccinated and my kids are quarantined. What's going on? So we're getting these questions from folks, so I just want to provide some clarification. What I'm going to tell you now is really what's written in the email that this video was attached to. So really go back there, look at the text of that. That's really going to be your best bet, because I'm going to miss something reading through all of this right now. I can tell you that right now. But so let's start with why. So why are the students placed in quarantine? And why aren't all the students placed in quarantine? And really, it really comes down to that. For the most part, our kids are unvaccinated. Really, the vast majority of the students in our district are not even eligible to be vaccinated. And so the problem with that is if a student is a close contact, there is no way to guarantee that they're going to be tested on a regular basis, right? The PCR testing, which is one of the ways you can keep folks in school, unvaccinated folks in school. And there's no guarantee that even if they are tested, that those results will be reported to the district in a timely manner. And so because the district doesn't have any control over that, at least not yet, the best, safest bet is to just start quarantining folks, right? And so the next question would be, well, why are some whole classes quarantined when in other classes, only a cluster of students or a few students are quarantined? And that is a great question. Really, that has to do with age. Older kids, when the district does their contact tracing within the district, because there has been a close contact with some member or a student has tested positive, they can go to older kids and ask them questions. Where you've been, who you been near, who are you near, that kind of stuff. And also even the questions about time frames. And kids might not know that we started, our group at 10:15 and we ended at 10:35, but they do kind of know that they were in, a group with this particular student during group A, and the teacher can verify that group A was 10:15 to 10:35, or that I sat next to this person at lunch and it was from this time to this time. So kids are much better historians of their own history, right? Now, the exact opposite is true for our really young students. Really young students really just don't have a good sense of their own self-history. So when you ask them questions like, who was sitting around you for more than 15 minutes in a day, they don't even know what you're talking about, right? So it's much more difficult to contact trace with the little ones than it is with the older kids. We can't treat both groups the same, right? And so with little kids, they tend to quarantine the entire class. If a TK or a pre-K or a K class, there's a positive case somewhere in the classroom, they tend to quarantine the entire class for the 10 days only because the contact tracing is extremely difficult. For older kids, you're going to see clusters being isolated and quarantined because you can with proper contact tracing. Now, before you start sending emails to me about the holes in contact tracing, I get it. It's not a perfect system, but it is a system that the district has. It's a system that the county is using. It's a system that we currently have. So if you feel like if there's a cluster of kids in your class, let's say 8 kids who are all home on quarantine, and you believe that you were potentially a close contact to one of those kids, right? And don't start guessing which one was positive, because that's not our role. It's not our role to know that history of our students. But if you feel like you were a close contact, report that to Sean Chenoweth. Report that to your school nurse. All right. And so you do have some control over kind of injecting yourself into a process if you feel like you have been overlooked. So part of my class, or my entire class, has been quarantined, but not me. Why or why not? And that's a great question. I'm getting these emails as well. Hey, my whole class is out. I'm still reporting to work. And that's because you have been vaccinated. So if you go back to the email that this video was attached to, you look down at the bottom of the section of the text for this particular segment, you'll see that infographic from the county. And the Santa Barbara County Department of Public Health says that if you have been vaccinated and you're not showing symptoms and you have not tested positive, that you can continue to go to work and without any restrictions. So no restrictions on where you go, no restrictions on the people or number of people that you're around. And so that's why you're not being quarantined. Now, if you're not vaccinated, that's a whole different story. If you're unvaccinated or you can't prove vaccination, then you'll be quarantined along with your students, all right? And so those of you who have been quarantined and you're reporting to work or being asked to report to work, it's because that is the recommendation of public health as of right now. So that's what current science is telling us. And then, so my class is quarantined and I'm not because I'm vaccinated. Now my admin is assigning me to sub for other teachers. Is that legit and is it safe? So this is the other thing that's happening, not so much with the older kids, but more with the younger, because like I said, it's the really younger kids, the younger grades, where the entire class is being quarantined. So if I'm a TK teacher, my whole class is quarantined, but because I'm vaccinated, I don't show any symptoms. I even took a COVID test and then it came out negative. I'm going to be going to work. But once I'm at work, my kids are home with the packets that the school is providing, and so can my site administrator assign me to another role that I'm qualified to fulfill, like to sub for somebody else who's absent? Yes, they can. So they can do that because they're not double dipping on responsibilities. In other words, you're not being responsible for the students that are quarantined and being responsible for a class that you're subbing for at the same time. Now, if you were responsible for those kids at home, if you're creating lessons, which is an option, right? You're providing work for those kids, you're checking that stuff online, you're going in, you're interacting with them on a regular basis. If you are engaging with those kids and you're providing the work for those kids and you are taking the responsibility for their academics while they are quarantined, then you can't also be expected to be the sub for somebody else during that same time, all right? Third thing, suspensions. So let's talk suspensions. And no, not that kind of suspension. The suspension from students from class versus suspensions from students from school. Now, last year during quarantine, this really wasn't an issue. I didn't really get any phone calls or any members calling me about students who were very difficult, who were out of control, unidentified students who are in gen ed classes, who are disruptive or aggressive, who are biting, spitting, destroying things, just all the whole gamut. And those of you who had these kids, you understand what I'm talking about. And those of you who haven't had these kids in your classroom know from other teachers what I'm talking about. And so really wasn't an issue while we were distant. Well, now we're back in person, and so with being in person comes all the things that being in person entails. And so one of those is this idea that when you have students in your class who are just so severely disruptive to the educational experience that you don't know what to do, you do have the option of suspending from your class. Now, let's be 100% clear. Suspension from the classroom is not your first option. Suspension from your classroom is your last option. It comes after everything else. It comes after using your own progressive discipline. It comes after using your de-escalation techniques. It comes after counseling with your site administrator, psychologist, and anybody else on your campus who can help you to try and figure out a way to improve the academic experience for everybody in the classroom, including that student who's having difficulties. But if you need to suspend a student from your class for whatever reason, and your administrator does not feel like there is justification for a suspension, you do have a right under Ed Code 48910, to suspend a student from your classroom for the day of the suspension and the day following, for those two days. And that is your right. And nobody can take that right away from you. In fact, at times when Ed Code is rewritten or information is added to the Ed Code that is more restrictive, on things like suspensions, the legislators have been very careful to make sure that Ed Code 48910 is not disturbed. And so that stays intact and has stayed intact all these years and is accessible to you all. So the two forms of suspension are suspension from school, which is done by an administrator, and there's suspension from the classroom, which is done by you, the classroom teacher. And that is your right to use that if you absolutely need it. And I'm here to help if you have any questions about that. But it definitely is still your right. If you go back to the email that this video was attached to, you'll see a nice long text description of the two forms of suspensions: school suspensions by an administrator, classroom suspensions by a teacher, and all the specifics of what both of those mean. There's also hyperlinks in there to the actual Ed Code 48910, which is the teacher suspension language, and then also hyperlinks to 48900, which is the general suspension language, which includes the list of all the suspendable offenses as determined by legislation and is in Ed Code. And just before we go, so all the suspendable offenses are listed in order by a letter. So each one, there's the A offenses, B's and C's. Each one is described out in Ed Code. Well, the K offense is the willful defiance, right? This, kids who just won't cooperate. But that comes in a lot of shapes and sizes. And so, you wouldn't suspend a kid because they won't take their jacket off in class on a hot day. That's not a willfully defiant student. And because the records show and the history really shows that students of color are more likely to be suspended because of willful defiance of K offenses. The state has put restrictions on when those K offenses can be used to suspend a student. In some cases, they can't be used at all. But for 48910, suspension from class by a teacher, right? There are no limitations or restrictions. So any restrictions that might exist under 48900's process for suspension does not exist in 48910, suspension from class by a teacher, up to and including willful defiance K offenses. So you can suspend because of that, if it's where you really need to go in order to protect your class, protect the rest of your students, and really to protect that student from themselves. And so that's all I got for you today. It's Friday. Have a great weekend. It's 5, 6 o'clock by the time you get this. So I don't know, maybe this weekend I'll get a haircut and do something fun, hang out with the dog. Whatever you do, I hope that it's relaxing for you. I hope that whatever you do brings you joy, allows you an opportunity to relax, to kind of shed the week and then move forward into the next. And so thanks everybody. Good to talk to you. We'll see you soon.